disliked gatherings of people and their talk, but it would be nice to know you weren't caged in all winter, just in case there was something you wanted to do, like following deer trails until you came upon a herd grazing, flipping their white tails, unaware that you were there because you had been careful and quiet. He had stood at the window so long, the clouds looked to be lifting a little, and only fine needles of snow scratched at the glass. If the sky cleared, the full moon would come out. Tonight he dreaded the dark, because of the fear that was in him. He had tackled a man's problems from the age of 10 and had almost always found a way through. But the fear spread now unchecked, because there was nothing he could do to end this trouble. Nothing. If he could just shut out the snores and groans and coughs of the other men sleeping on the floors in adjoining rooms. He had come to loathe most of the ragged band of Shays regulators with whom he had marched, burning, demolishing everything before them during the past 3 months, the winter of 1787. The men who had been friendly, full of cheer and sympathy for each other when they began the march toward Springfield to blow up the government arsenal, had changed. What good instincts they once shared were gone. No one had even offered to help him nurse Tim. Wretched in their filth and rags and lice, the few who had surrendered with him and Timothy to Captain Park Holland's ailing wife 2 days ago now filled James with revulsion. 1 or 2 still wore sprigs of drying hemlock in their cocked hats, imitating Captain Daniel Shays, still proud to be known as his followers. During the agonizing march to Petersam, James had ripped the hemlock from his hat and Tim's. "Not that I don't believe Daniel Shays meant to be doing right all along," he had told Tim. "Those corrupt Massachusetts courts had to be shut down. You know that, if anybody does. Hill farmers like us can't pay the same taxes those rich Boston merchants pay." He and Tim and the others had left their farms and sawmills and shops, believing that if they armed themselves and marched on courthouses in great enough numbers, they could change the rotten system. In the beginning, they had felt encouraged. At Northampton, in James's own county of Hampshire, and at Worcester, Shays rebels had broken windows, set fires, and at gunpoint had kept out the sheriff, the members of the court, even the judge himself. Maybe he could laugh again someday at the sight of Tim prodding the short, dumpy Worcester judge with his musket to make sure he hopped all the way out the courthouse door. That was in the beginning. Now, there were only anger and humiliation and fear. Not because he and Tim had gone with Shays, but because the rebellion had failed. James felt cheated, duped. He had obeyed Shays' erratic, sometimes insane orders, had marched for miles over and around the Berkshire hills through the worst part of the winter, had slept in barns and on the cold floors of houses commandeered by Shays. He had known real hunger. He had done nothing of which he was ashamed except that, along with the others, he had failed. As a schoolboy, his were always the highest marks in his class. In the fields, James Gould expected to finish hoeing first, to gather more hands of wheat than the other boys. His pride in being able to plow a straighter row than his brother Horace, carve a more shapely trencher for Mother's table, chop a neater stack of cordwood, had come to be an art of his very being. Why not? There was certainly nothing admirable in Horace's clumsy fingers, even if he had always been able to talk rings around James to win their mother's attention and approval. By now, the other men seemed to care only about giving up. Exhausted and homesick, they cursed Daniel Shays along with the courts, their surly silence, even as they bolted down the good